This is Pulsar's latest collab mouse, the SUSANTO X, a collaboration between Pulsar and the SUSANTO brothers, which include Forsaken from PaperX and Xcrit, formerly from T1. Forsaken is a player who is still widely revered as one of the best flex players in Valorant right now, which is great, and he recently won his first international Major LAN Valorant trophy, aka VCT Masters Toronto. On the other hand, his brother Xcrit saw a relatively decent level of success in Counter-Strike, moved to Valorant where he saw a bit of success, didn't do all that well, but retired to become a content creator. As a result of this though, I am willing to bet that this mouse is more catered towards Forsaken's needs rather than Xcrit's needs, because, well, Forsaken is actively competing and needs to win tournaments to continue having his job, whereas Xcrit is playing as a streamer, so it's not as serious and not as deep for him. The next thing though is that you have to realize that Forsaken and Xcrit both use a GPX Superlight before this mouse was released, which means the mouse that we have here is going to kind of be an evolution on that. We've kind of seen that with every single one of Pulsar's Pro Series mouse collabs. The ZywOo mouse is just based on Vexy's ZywOo mouse. The TENS mouse is based on the GPX as well, kind of inspired as a starting point because TENS wanted to make a mouse that would appeal to everyone. And the SUSANTO X is also very obviously inspired by the GPX, or at least clearly has the GPX as a starting point before it further evolved to fit the pro player's needs. If you put this mouse side by side with the GPX, the shape is very apparent that it has a very similar curve, a very similar kind of rare flare out hips shape to the GPX. But there are a few notable changes. For one, it is a smaller mouse. Overall, the hum, the width, the length is just ever so slightly smaller than your normal GPX. I'm guessing Forsaken probably finds the GPX that he used previously a little too big. But most of the visual and actual volume of the mouse isn't removed from all of it equally. Most of it actually comes from the front, where you see the sides get a lot more narrow on the SUSANTO X rather than the GPX2. The clicks are also a little bit more indented than on the Logitech G Pro Superlight, which is quite nice because their slightly deeper groove does give you a bit more of a comfortable place to put your fingers on your clicks. It feels a little bit more locked in like that, which I do quite enjoy. That combined with the fact that this mouse is 50 grams, which is about 10 grams lighter than the GPX2, and the fact that it has a pretty solid coating on the plastic that I think is about as grippy as a Superlight would be without any grip tape, you end up with a very comfortable mouse to hold that is quite familiar but slightly different at the same time. This is definitely going to be a claw grip shape first and foremost. You have a big supportive hump that is going to be great for normal or relaxed claw grips. You have slightly concave sides and clicks that give your fingertips a nice place to rest, and the flat out rare hips kind of hold your palm in place as you claw grip the mouse. But because it's smaller than the GPX Superlight, if you find the GPX2 a little too big, or just flat out too big, but you like the general style of the shape, this might be that mouse for you. Or maybe the GPX2C when that comes out. As for fingertip gripping this mouse, I have to say that it's not the most desirable. The hump is a little bit too big, and the narrower sides and narrower front means that it's a lot harder to reach around the hump with your fingers to fingertip grip this mouse properly. But it's definitely still doable, and I think for some people they'll still enjoy fingertip gripping this, though I don't see how you would prefer fingertip gripping this mouse to something like a GPX2 if that's your style of fingertip gripping. And if you're palm gripping this mouse, I would say it's doable. It's thick and chunky and relatively supportive enough, but you definitely want to have slightly smaller hands to do that because it's an even smaller GPX2 in many ways. As for size recommendations for claw gripping, I think for hand sizes about 17 centimeters and longer, you're going to be able to claw grip this quite comfortably. For hand sizes about 18 centimeters or 19 centimeters and longer, you're going to be able to fingertip grip this mouse quite comfortably. And if you're trying to palm grip this mouse, I will only recommend it for people with hand sizes smaller than 18 centimeters long. If not, it might be a little bit not comfortable. As for other aspects of this mouse, the build quality is rock solid, as you would expect from a Pulsar Pro Series mouse. The clicks are a optical switch clicks, which I'm pretty disappointed by because I love the pink dot blue shells on the ZywOo and the Pulsar X2F, but I'm guessing that's what Forsaken prefers, a non-double click issue optical switch that has higher performance. It doesn't feel quite as crisp as the Huanos do on the X2F, but it still has no pre-travel and no post-travel, so I really don't have any complaints about it. The scroll wheel is crisp and sharp like a Pulsar scroll always is, which I think it uses a Pulsar Blue encoder, and it thumb buttons are pretty solid. I think there's a little bit of play here and there in the post-travel, but there is no pre-travel when it's crisp and sharp, so no real complaints there. The XS1 sensor in here runs at 8000 Hz polling rate if you want. And if you don't know what the XS1 sensor is, it's basically just a Pixart 3950, but Pulsar has their own firmware on it so that they can call it their own sensor. The mice feet are also really quite big. They're clearly inspired by the more control-oriented mice feet of the GPX Superlight. They're not quite as slow as the Superlight's feet, which are big and really, honestly, feel like stoppers sometimes. But they are also more control-friendly than the ones you find on a lot of the other Pulsar mice like the X Lite Crazy Light or the X2 Crazy Light because of that bigger size that you have on the feet material. All in all, I really enjoy the SUSANTO X mouse. I think it is a very solid, smaller GPX2 that I actually quite enjoy using. It's not going to be my daily driver because it's not precisely what I want right now. But I think for a lot of people, especially people who find the Superlight 2 ever so slightly too big, it's going to be a great choice. The issue though is that it's quite pricey at $130 US, but that's because some of the money has to go to royalties to these two pro players, so I understand. It's not Pulsar's usual $120 US or $100 US. But you also have to consider the fact that while this shape isn't crazy, and you also have to consider that while this mouse isn't super crazy out there, it's a new shape that isn't exactly the same as anything we've seen before. And I think the closest competitor for this mouse, with the same build quality, the same performance, and the same big brand reputation behind it, is going to be the Logitech G Pro Superlight 2C when that comes out in a month or two. And that's probably going to launch at $150, $160 US. And if that's the case, then this mouse is going to be a slightly cheaper option than that.